and a good evening to all of my beautiful listeners out there. I'm Golden Microphone and you're listening to Oatstralia on Air Live. Welcome back to FanFiction Fridays after a 3-week hiatus. I do apologize, my dear listeners, but things did get in the way quite a bit, including moving to a new house, learning about new people, and just trying to get, everything settled again. I do believe this week I'm settled enough to be able to come back to you. It's good to be back. It really, really is. Let's settle away from the fire for a second there. Yes, back in my chair. So, an awful lot has been happening as of late. Well, I suppose we should start at the beginning. I was very basically evicted, but not really. We were just given a moving notice way back then. And I had to scramble for a place. My housemate at the time said to live with her, and while that was a great offer, I was starting to get romantically involved with someone at the time as well. Well, it's an interesting story, that. Very interesting story, and to make a very long story short, I'm currently living with her now. Hooray! Just so that you all know, and because I'm actually very happy and very proud of this, she's my girlfriend, and her name is Michelle. A lot of you out there probably know her as Moons. She's a great, great person. Oh, love her. Love her to pieces. I love you, Moons. Not sure she can hear me from inside this room, but hey, whatever. I notice in the chat that Worthy is in fact here, so that means she is listening. Hello. Probably going to have a little bit of lag between my room and what they hear on the laptop out there, but you know, whatevers. Well, if you guys are ready, I'm quite ready. We can get ourselves right into tonight's stories. The first of which... we really need to keep going with this. It is Vinyl and Octavia, University Days. I will be putting a link into the chat, of course. Well, actually it's the social stream, but yes, I'll mostly be here in the chat. So have a look over in the social stream for the link to the current chapter that we're up to. That's chapter 5. I'll just turn the music down just that little bit more. There we go. And we can get ourselves started on the first story of the night already. Ladies and gentlemen, Vinyl and Octavia, University Days, Chapter 5. A glowing pencil twirled and skittered along the paper under the gaze of purple shades. Smooth, curving lines arranged into a certain pattern littered the entire sheet, much to the teacher's confusion. "Are you okay, Vinyl?" she asked, drawing the attention of the entire class. For a moment, the pencil paused in its delicate activity, and its controller raised her head off the table slightly. "Yeah?" The teaching mayor hesitated before continuing, and a few of the students turned their heads subtly, also interested in the DJ's behavior. "It's just, you've been drawing nothing but treble clefs since we began today. I know you're already quite a skilled artist, but surely you could use some practice at defining texture like the rest of us." "Probably." Another unbroken line, swirling around and trailing off with a little flick. Trying a different approach, the teacher brushed imaginary dirt specks from her coat to appear nonchalant. "Last week you mentioned that you might know some pony who would be willing to model for us?" Finally, Vinyl stopped doodling and gave her full attention. "Yeah, I haven't asked her yet, but I was thinking, don't we have, like, professional models or whatever?" Grateful for a proper response for once, the mayor smiled. "We do, but they've modeled for my class for years now, and I want some pony new to have every pony sketch. It's not good to get used to drawing the same ponies over and over." The white unicorn simply nodded and began drawing yet another of the musical symbols that occupied her mind. But the teacher was determined not to let the conversation end that easily. Vinyl had always been one of the more outspoken members of the class, so seeing her being so quiet was worrying. So, who is this mystery mare? Earth pony, grey fur. What's her cutie mark? Maybe I've seen her around the campus. Vinyl subtly moved a hoof to cover as many of the treble clefs as possible. I can't remember. I haven't known her for long. Well, I'm certainly excited to see her. Do you think you can convince her to come in next week? Yeah, no problem. Satisfied that all was once again right in her classroom, the mare went back to the front of the class and the other ponies returned to their own conversations and work. All except one, that is. A stallion with a narrow face and a coat of dark brown was sitting beside Vinyl, eyeing her work with interest. His name was Shady Oaks, and he was the only pony brave enough to talk to a silent DJ. Yo, what's up with you today, dude? He whispered, nudging a hoof. Nothing. What's up with you? She hissed back, continuing to trace those silken lines. Wondering why you're being a zombie, mostly. Stop wondering, 'cause nothing's wrong. Don't you have some texture to define? Shady snuffed a laugh. Come on, I only took this class because drawing is easy as hay and doesn't have any exams. Seriously though, what's up? Don't act like we're best mates, okay? Just back off. The Earth Pony shuffled away, his long black hair unfurling like a shield between his eyes and Vinyl. Whatever. You don't have to be such a bitch about it. Go cry to your mum, muttered Vinyl without thinking. Celestia, he's right. What the hell's wrong with me today? It seemed as if her years of experience making friends and being sociable were all going down the drain, leaving an angry core that couldn't even hold a conversation. I can't be like that. What if I was a bitch to Octavia? Her chest clenched at the thought, and she knew the problem had to be fixed before it got worse. Lightly tapping Shady's hoof to get his attention, Vinyl took a deep breath. Listen, don't worry about it, he replied instantly, brushing his hair aside. What? I think I know why you're so weird today. Heat slowly crept up the DJ's neck as she cautiously inquired. Yeah? My little sister Lilycup is in your psychology class. She said the tutor is always picking on you. Lilycup? That tiny light brown mare who always looked nervous? She said that? Yeah. Also told me that you were kind of mean to her in the first tutorial, but she forgives you. Vinyl wasn't sure what to say to that. Don't worry, I forgive you too, dude. Going to that class every week while knowing that the teacher is just going to be a dick to you must be frustrating. That was it! Pretending to hate Octavia must be messing with my head. No wonder I'm being a jerk today. But that stopped now. This DJ wasn't about to let Psych control how she behaved. You have no idea. If you ever feel like getting wasted and forgetting about it all, I can hook you up with cheap booze. Keep it on the down low, though. Vinyl scratched her chin thoughtfully. Drinking buddies can come in handy, after all. I might just do that. Here, put your number in my phone. She floated the object in question out of a saddlebag and over to Shady, who took it with a grin. As he tapped his own digits in, it was difficult to ignore a certain other name in the contacts. Octavia, he whispered. You've got Octavia's number? Blood rushed to her face as she began to stammer before being interrupted. Half the stallions here would kill for that number, and the other half are gay. Damn, it must be awesome being a DJ and getting to talk with all those higher-ups. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Did he not realize that the cellist was also in her psychology class? Or was he playing a game with her? Here. He handed the phone back cheerfully. There didn't seem to be anything malicious about him, that's for sure. But how could she tell? The rest of the class passed in an uncomfortable haze for the white unicorn. She managed to stop drawing treble clefs and did a quick sketch to demonstrate her knowledge of texture, earning kind words and a smile from the teacher, who clearly assumed that everything was now back to normal. But the second Vinyl walked out the door, her phone was out and dialing. Constant arguing was taking a toll on her social skills, and that needed to end quickly if she was going to remain good at her job. calling Octavia. Ring, ring. Hello, Vinyl! The slightly tinny voice of a friend greeted happily. How was drawing? Same old, same old. What's up? I am completing a history assignment at the moment. Oh, and I have some exciting news! The DJ smiled at how enthusiastic the normally calm mayor was. Yeah? I received a notice telling me that some pony had been assigned to my room. Oh, I hope it's you. Don't get your hopes up. I'm probably not important enough to share with you rich ponies, she replied, chuckling a little to make it clear she was joking. Oh, don't talk like that. Darn, I just remembered that I know the student coordinator. I should have gone to see her and requested you as my dorm mate. I don't think that would have worked. Vinyl hoped her grin wasn't audible. She's probably not allowed to let students choose who they share with. It was becoming difficult not to laugh. Ah, you're probably right, Octavia sighed. I'll just have to hope that they're friendly. Or sexy. Or both. Then you'd never be bored. The cellist giggled at that. You have a one-track mind, Vinyl. I regret nothing. Hey, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. She looked over to make sure no pony was close enough to hear. The building was almost empty now that her class was over. What is it? You know, pretend arguments. Yes? I don't know if I can do them anymore, Vinyl said simply. Why? 'Cause I don't like arguing with you. But we're just pretending. I know, but it's still... I don't know, but it's not fun anymore. There was a moment of silence in which she bit her lip worriedly. What should we do then? The cellist finally replied, her happy mood having clearly abated. Maybe not argue? Instead, we could just don't talk to each other during that class. We'll act like we just can't even stand the thought of speaking now. Like we hate each other that much. Well, okay. I thought you liked trading insults with me, but if it's bothering you that much, then I'll agree to stop. Lionel winced. I do like trading insults with you, really. It's just I'm still acting bitchy even after we stop arguing, and I don't like it. You don't seem bitchy when we're doing our little assignments. Are you sure you're not just being too hard on yourself? The DJ snorted before replying. Well, obviously I haven't been bitchy to you. How is that obvious? I'm not following, queried the mayor on the other end. I meant like... Well, it doesn't matter. What I'm worried about is that I might become bitchy with you, and I guess I like you too much to risk ruining our friendship. The words came easier than expected, and for once Vinyl didn't feel as though there could have been a better way to get her message across. Oh, well, if you phrase it in that manner, I understand what you mean. Very well. From now on, we shan't talk in class. Sweet. And thank you for saying that. Saying what? That you don't want to risk ruining our friendship. Having never experienced one before, it feels nice to be reminded that I now have one, and that it's with somebody who seems to value me as much as I value them. Vinyl felt a little awkward having everything spelt out like that instead of just taking it as a given, but when she considered that Octavia had nothing else to draw from when it came to this kind of situation, it became a lot more tolerable. Hey, no worries. I'll text you 100 times a day if you want to remind you. If you want and remind you. They giggled together, and the DJ took advantage of the brief gap in spoken conversation in order to once again make sure that no pony was nearby. An irritatingly familiar mint-green unicorn was making her way down the hall beside an orange mare with carrots on her flank. Maybe one or two texts to that effect would be nice, but you don't have... Oh, crap, sorry, I gotta go. Without waiting for a goodbye, she exited the call and slipped the phone back into its pouch. She's the one I told you about, Lyra whispered to her friend loudly, clearly not actually trying to hide her words. So, Vinyl, were you talking to your new mare friend? It turned out that there were some upsides to being forced into a battle of insults every week, namely, a razor-sharp wit and good reflexes. Nope, I was talking to yours, replied the white unicorn with a wink. Lyra seemed slightly dumbfounded, and her friend broke into laughter. Shut up, Sea-Top. muttered the mayor irritably. Final didn't stick around for a second bout. I'll leave you to whatever it is you're doing in this building together. Alone. She let those words hang in the air and marched straight past them, heading for the exit. Unwilling to let her get away with the last word, Lyra called out, I'm not gay! The DJ mentally wished herself luck and took a stab in the social dark. Does Bonbon know that? She shouted back. A brief pause, the quiet voice of C-Top inquiring, What does she mean by that, Lili? The air outside tasted of victory. A huge grin stretched her cheeks almost painfully, but it was so worth it. Lyra would have a fair bit of difficulty digging herself out of whatever it is she got stuck in. Even without the details, it looked messy. With success flowing behind her, as well as the knowledge that the only ponies she needed to be mean to now were those who deserved it, Final was feeling pretty good about her lot in life. In a few days, she'd surprise Octavia by moving in while the cellist was in a class or something, and they'd be able to spend all night talking, face to face, instead of through a phone. And then she'd really be in heaven. All Octavia, all day long. This time, Final didn't even bother coming up with an excuse. She liked being around that grey mare, and there was no point denying it. It was the other things that could use a little denying. And that right there, dear listeners, was Chapter 5 of Final and Octavia University Days. If you liked what you're hearing and you want this to continue, give us a yay. But if you don't like what you're hearing and you don't want us to continue with the story, give us a nay. That's for you YouTubers and for you in the chat tonight, down in the comments below or live in the chat. For now, though, we're going to skip ourselves over to something brand new. Well, it's not brand new, but it's something brand new to me. I'd only heard it today, so yeah, there is that. What we're going to do is we're going to put on a bit of music. It's a little bit on the long side and a little bit on the repetitive side, I will admit, but I like to think of it as a relaxation kind of thing. Whilst it is a battle of styles, a battle of different genres, it's still relaxing somehow. Ladies and gentlemen, in for the kill, Octavia vs. Final Scratch by Delta Brony. Do enjoy.
How uncouth. Some ponies prefer stringed instruments. Classy.
Oh yeah, dishes! Are you ready for these wolves of destruction? Dum motherfuckers!
Classy.
Oh yeah, dishes! Are you ready for these wolves of destruction?
That was In for the Kill, Octavia versus Vinyl Scratch by Delta Brony. Again, as I said, a little bit on the long side, but you gotta admit, pretty nice to relax to. Strangely relaxing. Before we go on with the next story, I'd like to point out that very recently, myself, Karoshia, and one other, were invited on to... Myself, Karoshia, and Single File were invited by Noteworthy to take part in a podcast known as the Hoofwave. The super pilot for it came out only about a week or so ago, and the super pilot with its updated audio, because let's face it, it's a first-time podcast. Audio problems were to be had, but they fixed everything up, and everything sounds fantastic. It's a bit on the long side, however, it is actually rather fun, quite informative, and it's pretty much just a bunch of us having a chat together. I'm on this, Karoshi is on this, Single File's on this, Noteworthy is our host. And we recorded this while we were on our road trip to Canberra, actually. So yeah, have a gander at that. I'll put it into the chat for you live listeners, and I'm also going to put it into the description for everyone else on YouTube. There we go. So that's going into the social stream for you live chatters. There we go. Alright, so there you go. A neato plug for a good old friend of mine. The Hoofwave Podcast, Episode 1, The Super Pilot, with Noteworthy and Karoshia featuring myself and Single File. Pretty good, actually. Pretty darn good. Okay, before we get into the next story, I'd like to put on the... actually, you know what? I think I might put that as... Yes, you know what? Ordinarily, I'd have a piece of music right here that relates to the next story, but instead we're just going to go straight to the story, and we're going to use this music as the ending credits because, well, as much as I absolutely love the pony No Pony Should Ever Give Up, YouTube doesn't, which means that the show doesn't get broadcast in certain countries. Not entirely sure which ones. I think one of them is Germany, and I'd much rather like to hear the German side of things, if that made any sense. I just want everyone to hear the great stories. Sure, I don't speak any German, but, you know, things and stuff and things. Well, enough of my blathering on. We're going to get on with the next story. This will be Chapter 4 of Age. Once again, the links are in the description below, and for you listening live, the link has just been put into the social stream, so go on over there and have a look. I will be sitting down in the chat and waiting around. Well, not waiting around, I will be reading. If you'll remember, in the last chapter, Sweetie Belle and Rarity have vanished, which leaves Spike, Scootaloo, and Apple Bloom deep in the Everfree forest by themselves. Great. Of Age. Chapter 4. Let's go after her! Cutie Mark Crusaders, missing friend detectives! This isn't a game, guys, Spike said, climbing up on a stump to appear as authoritative as possible. Apple Bloom and Scootaloo shut their mouths and looked up at him from where they stood by the dismal, scummy pond. We need to be realistic. Sweetie Belle is missing, Spike continued, hoping his hands weren't shaking too much. None of us knows which way she went. If she followed Rarity last night, she could be miles away from us by now, or already lost, and maybe that gargoyle captured her again, or maybe she's fallen down a hole, or maybe... So what are we waiting for? Scootaloo interrupted. Let's go! Wait! Spike hopped off the stump, darting at the orange filly and holding out his hands to stop her from running off. No! We can't just go chasing off in a random direction in the Everfree forest. We won't just pick one at random, Apple Bloom said, stepping forward. Maybe we can figure out which way she went first. Yeah, did Rarity tell you which way she was headed? Scootaloo asked. Spike shook his head. A chilly breeze brushed past all of them. Not really, he said, shuddering from either the wind or the half-lie he couldn't tell. She's heading out of the forest, all the way to the eastern edge and beyond. I don't know exactly where, but I guess we could start by heading east. Although, I promised Rarity I'd get the fillies home. Would she want me to chase after Sweetie Belle, possibly losing 2 more ponies in the process? Or should I get them home first and put together a rescue team? Spike glanced up at the sky, which had begun to cloud over. Oh, what would Twilight do? If Rainbow Dash was here, she could just zoom right through the forest and find Sweetie Belle like that, Scootaloo said, slamming her front hooves together in emphasis. Applejack could have just tracked her down. Applebloom sighed. She's real good at finding Winona when she gets loose. Heck, even Fluttershy would do a better job out here than us, Scootaloo grumbled. Remember when she saved us from that cockatrice? Remember when I saved you from that gargoyle? Spike wanted to point out, but held his tongue. They weren't trying to be insulting towards him. They were just being realistic, which is exactly what he told them to try to be. It was true. Pretty much any pony would be better in this situation than him. He couldn't fault them for pointing that out. Still, though, Spike crossed his arms, settling his shoulders back and narrowing his eyes. Maybe we should... Spike started, but was cut off as an orange blur sailed into his chest. Oof! Whoa! Scootaloo exclaimed. Spike stumbled backwards, flailing so as not to fall. When his eyes found what had hit him, they lit up. Pee-wee! He gasped. What are you doing out here? What are you doing out here? An all-too-familiar voice demanded. Twilight! Spike spun toward the unicorn, relief washing through every scale on his skin. Thank goodness! Through the mossy forest branches, Twilight walked into the clearing where Spike and the fillies had slept. Pee-wee continued to flutter around Spike, trilling enthusiastically. Twilight magicked Spike towards her, throwing her hoof around him in a hug. Spike, you nearly gave me a heart attack. I woke up, you were gone, Pee-wee was going crazy, and as soon as I opened the door, he flew out towards the Everfree Forest of all places and... Spike hugged her back. You have no idea what's been happening, Spike said. He backed away from Twilight so he could look her in the eyes to explain. I followed the fillies last night into the Everfree Forest, and then this gargoyle. Sweetie Belle's missing! Applebloom interrupted. She went after Rarity. Spike totally destroyed the gargoyle. But then we were lost and... Wait, Sweetie Belle's been kidnapped by a gargoyle? Twilight asked, interrupting Scootaloo. She danced back in panic. No, 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 Spike said, shaking his head quickly. Well, hopefully not. Spike, I think you better start from the beginning. Twilight said. She sat down by the edge of the pond, waiting expectantly. Spike sighed. That's what I'd been trying to do, he thought to himself, but he knew better than to grumble at Twilight. All right, he said. Here goes. Rarity sidestepped quickly away from a patch of poison joke. Her hooves tripped through a viney patch of some other plant, which she sincerely hoped wasn't anything worse than the one she was trying to avoid. Ugh! She shuddered, turning and careening straight into a spiderweb. Ugh! She repeated even louder, shaking the thin silk threads off her face. This forest! I'm so sick of it! Rarity tripped into a mud hole and screeched in rage. Ah! She'd had enough of the outdoors, and she wasn't even a full day through her quest yet. Rarity pulled her feet out of the sticky mud, and stumbled to the side, collapsing on the ground and letting out a sob. This is impossible, she gasped. If only she could take a moment to rest, some time to actually get some sleep. This wasn't the first time she'd pulled an all-nighter before, but it was the first time she'd done it while also filling the hours with intense running, crazy amounts of panic and emotional goodbyes. Rarity pulled her thoughts away from the night before. She didn't have time to dwell on the images floating in her mind. Sweetie Belle, asleep in the pile of fillies. Spike, his eyes closed tight in a restless slumber. She shook her head. The sun was up. She was late for a meeting with the Canterlot Guard. Rarity felt her eyes watering. Failing already. She pushed her tears away, wincing as she streaked mud over her cheek with her hoof. Not much she could do about that now. She just had to press on. Rarity continued to head east, following the newly risen sun. It was a great relief that she wandered past the old ruins, where long ago she and her friends had faced off against Nightmare Moon. Rarity knew those ruins were near the far edge of the forest. It couldn't be much further now. The unicorn subconsciously put a hoof to her throat, remembering how the element of generosity had materialized around her neck, changing her life forever. She'd been a simple shop owner, with simple dreams. She just wanted to become a top fashion designer famous throughout all of Equestria for her amazing dresses and super exclusive clients. And then there were the elements of harmony, taking down discord, fighting off changelings, getting kidnapped by diamond dogs, getting kidnapped by a dragon. Everything had changed for Rarity when Twilight Sparkle came to town. She brought with her adventure. She brought with her Spike. Rarity sighed. Yes, her priorities had changed. Taking on this journey was clear evidence of that. A little part of her longed for the simpler times. But as she walked through the forest and thought more about it, Rarity knew she would never trade her dear friendship with Twilight and Spike for all the fashion awards in Equestria. The trees became more sparse. Rarity's head lifted up slightly. Was she finally out of the forest? She felt herself kick up her pace into a trot. Yes! Yes, she was! Rarity went into a full gallop, racing into the meadow ahead of her. I'm so sorry I'm late, Rarity apologized, calling out. She glanced around for the guards. They must be quite bored by now, waiting for her to show up, though perhaps they were relieved to have some time off. Princess Celestia had them sent over from the extended duties near the coast after all. Rarity slowed her steps, looking left and right in the clearing. Hello, she called. Anybody there? Silence answered her. Rarity stood, frozen still, as a breeze softly pushed the blades of grass around her. The guards weren't there. Rarity swallowed. All right, no need to panic. They might just be running late, as you were. She sat down. I'll just wait a bit. It'll be fine. They'll come. Rarity couldn't believe how nice it felt to sit on the dirt and the grass. She was sure her coat was getting filthy, but she couldn't bring herself to care. At that moment, the only thoughts she could process were that she needed to wait for the guards, that it had been a long time since she'd gotten any sleep. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Twilight paced back and forth. This is a situation. Understatement of the year there, Twilight, thanks, Spike said, rolling his eyes at the mare. So what do we do? He'd hoped that when he'd finished this story, Twilight would have an immediate plan of action. That was her speciality, after all. She was the planning queen. But apparently that wasn't the case. Twilight just continued to pace back and forth, getting her hooves more and more muddy by the minute on the banks of the scum pond. Scootaloo and Applebloom had the good sense to be quiet as she thought through the possibilities. Well, with only a vague idea of which way Rarity went and therefore which way Sweetie Belle followed her, if Sweetie Belle followed her, Spike pointed out, we can only hope she did. Right. Twilight made a squeaking noise of panic. We need to find Sweetie Belle. That's a priority. But we can't know which way she went for sure. The most likely following Rarity means going to the other side of Everfree Forest. We can't possibly drag 2 more fillies through the forest, though. Twilight looked over at Scootaloo and Applebloom. We have to get them home. Then we organize a full search party and head back out to find Sweetie Belle. And Rarity? Spike asked. Spike, you know full well that Rarity can take care of herself. And that she's on a mission for the princess that we shouldn't interrupt. Twilight said. So we find Sweetie Belle. If she's with Rarity, then we find Rarity too. But if she's not, we'll just have to let Rarity finish whatever job it is she has. Hey, wait a minute, Scootaloo said. So we're going back to town? Without Sweetie Belle? To organize a search party? Yes, Twilight said, and get you 2 back safely. But we want to help find Sweetie Belle, Applebloom protested. You can, Twilight said. Really? Applebloom asked, her eyes shining. Yes, Twilight replied. From the safety of Ponyville. Now let's get going. Twilight turned and began to walk away. Hey! Applebloom yelled. No way! We're finding her now! Together! Yeah! Scootaloo agreed. The two fillies stood side by side, holding their heads high. Twilight stopped walking and gave them a look. Neither filly moved. Spike fiddled with his claws, Pee-wee on his shoulder. No pony budged, and the stare-off continued. Spike shook his head. You can't win against them with stubbornness, Twilight. Trust me. Guys, listen, Spike started. We have to find Sweetie Belle, yes, but remember earlier how you were saying how Rainbow Dash and Applejack could do a much better job? Well, that's what Twilight means here. We go back, not abandoning Sweetie Belle, so we can get other ponies to help find her. Because, you know, on our own, we wouldn't be that great at it. I mean, yeah, even with Twilight, we need help. Scootaloo and Applebloom eyed each other, considering. Eventually, they both hung their heads. Yeah, I guess so, Applebloom said. If that's the only way, Scootaloo added. It is, Spike said. Well, I think it is anyway. It is, Twilight said firmly. Thanks, Spike. Are you all ready to go now? The fillies nodded their heads glumly, and they followed Twilight out of the clearing. Spike walked behind them, Pee-wee nuzzling into his cheek. Little guy must have been the whole reason Twilight found them in the first place. Thanks, Pee-wee, Spike said. We wouldn't have gotten out here without you. The baby phoenix trilled in delight. By the time they finally got back through the Everfree Forest and past Fluttershy's cottage, Spike could scarcely trust his eyes. Ponyville had never looked more inviting. Spike wanted to run into the library, slam the door, and fall into his bed. However, as they walked into the town, Spike knew that was the opposite of his options at the moment. He had to track down Sweetie Belle. That meant getting the search party together and heading back into the forest. Pee-wee flew around Spike's head as he followed Twilight down the streets of Ponyville. Scootaloo and Applebloom were abnormally quiet behind him. They had been the entire walk out of the dark forest that had swallowed up their friend. Spike had to drag their wagon behind him, with Scootaloo's scooter tossed in it. The little orange filly didn't look up to moving it herself. She didn't look up to anything. Neither did Applebloom. Both of them dragged their hooves along, barely keeping up with him. Spike scratched the side of his cheek with his claw. He didn't know what to say to make them feel any better. He wasn't any happier than they were that they had to leave Sweetie Belle in the forest somewhere. There wasn't anything good about this situation, except maybe that at least not all three fillies had gotten lost. Okay, let's get you two to Sweet Apple Acres, Twilight said, nodding back to the fillies. Then we can meet up with Applejack and start putting together our search crew. Applebloom and Scootaloo nodded, and Spike grimaced. Poor girls, he thought to himself, sighing inwardly. But then his grimace twisted, and his cheek muscles yanked back in a familiar way. Bruh! Spike belched, a letter materializing out of his fire. He dropped the wagon handle and snatched the letter out of the air before it fell to the street. Twilight! A message from Princess Celestia! Twilight stopped in her tracks, quietly trotting back to Spike and the fillies and magicking the letter out of his hands. What is it? Scootaloo asked. What's the princess got to say? Applebloom wanted to know. Twilight scanned through the letter, her eyes getting wider and wider. Spike, I think our search party might be doing double duty, she said slowly, lowering the letter once she was done. What is it? Spike asked. Pee-wee landed on his shoulder, leaning forward with interest. The guards Princess Celestia asked to help Rarity on her quest haven't reported back to her in over 24 hours, Twilight explained. She thinks they might be in trouble. They may have never even met up with Rarity. What? Spike exclaimed. Where was his paper-breathing sack when he needed it? Rarity was supposed to have guards? And they aren't... They aren't reporting in? Well, then Rarity needs help. Like now. Twilight nodded grimly. Exactly. Rarity? At the sound of a name, Rarity slowly blinked her eyes open. Hey, Rarity? You okay? The unicorn felt a hoof nudge her side. Sweetie Belle, not now, Rarity mumbled, covering her hooves with her eyes to block the light. She wasn't sure what time it was, but she was quite certain it was too early to be awake. Her body informed her that she needed at least 3 more hours of beauty sleep. Sweetie Belle paused, and Rarity nestled further into the grass. The grass. Wait. Rarity's eyes flew open, and she leapt to her feet. Sweetie Belle! What are you doing out here? The meadow breeze pushed past Rarity, rustling the grass surrounding her and her sister. Abundant sunshine shone down on them both and reflected off the nearby stream, but the scenery at that moment was lost on the unicorn. Everything flooded back in a flash. Her mission, the Everfree Forest, leaving her sister, Spike and her sister's friends. Arriving in the meadow. No guards to meet her. I followed you, Sweetie Belle said. Where are the guards? Well, yes, I can see that, Rarity replied to her sister, waving one hoof around, flustered. But why? Had Sweetie Belle completely lost her mind? You were going deeper into the forest, Sweetie Belle explained, pacing back and forth through the clover patch she'd been standing in. I had to make sure you were safe. Her voice squeaked on that last syllable, and Rarity winced. Safe. Her baby sister, trying to keep her safe. The guards are supposed to keep me safe, Rarity thought to herself, looking around. They still aren't here. She bit her lower lip and looked back at Sweetie Belle. Sweetie, what am I going to do with you? She groaned. Do you have any idea what you've wandered into? Sweetie Belle didn't look Rarity in the eye. Well, not exactly, she set her jaw. But what did you want me to do? You were... Rarity couldn't bring herself to listen as Sweetie Belle rambled on about how impossible it would be not to follow her sister when she was wandering away into the Everfree Forest. There was only one thought in Rarity's mind. How do I get her back home safely and not break my promise to the princess? They were at least a day's walk away from Ponyville, if not more thanks to the dangers of the Everfree Forest. Rarity knew she was lucky enough to get through the forest unscathed herself, but to attempt it again, and this time with Sweetie Belle in tow, Rarity shuddered at the thought. But what choice did she have? Who knew what dangers lay ahead in her mission? Looking around the meadow, Rarity still couldn't find any signs of the guards she was promised. And without guards, how could she just walk into giant reptilian territories and be assured safety? Much less assure Sweetie Belle's safety. Rarity bit her lower lip. She was caught between a diamond and a crystallized rock wall, that was for sure. Some part of Rarity's mind registered that Sweetie Belle was still talking, and her ears faded back into the tirade of her little sister just in time to hear her shush up. And how was I supposed to know if you... Hey, what's that? Sweetie Belle stopped talking and instead gaped over Rarity's shoulders. Rarity turned, and then it was her turn to gawk. Coming straight at them, lumbering gracefully up the stream, was a long purple serpent with a familiar flowing mustache. It's... Rarity stared, blinking as the creature drew closer. Oh my, that river ends quickly, doesn't it? What an adorable little tributary. Unfortunately, it doesn't do much for us swimming types, the sea serpent said. Then he smiled at the 2 ponies he approached from across the meadow. It's been too long, Rarity the most generous one, far too long. And my, who is this precious one with you? I had hoped you'd come alone, but isn't she just charming? Who is this, Rarity? Sweetie Belle asked, her hooves dancing nervously. Rarity smiled in return, ignoring her sister and regaining her composure. She took a step forward towards the sea serpent. She'd had her suspicions, but she should have just plain guessed. Really. Of course, this was why the sea serpents had wanted to see her. It has been far too long. May I say your mustache has grown in even more fabulous than before. All thanks to you. The sea serpent bowed in her direction. Rarity blushed a bit. It's rather embarrassing, and I'm ever so sorry, my dear, but I'm afraid the last time we met, I never did catch your name. Really? The sea serpent asked, putting one hand to his chest in shock. How rude of me! Well, allow me to introduce myself then. My name is Stefan Marganet, Duke of Sea Serpentia, and your recommender, escort, and guide to my kin. And that is the end of Chapter 4 for Of Age. Once again, it's all up to you whether you want this story to continue or not. Leave us a yay or a nay in the comments if you're listening on YouTube, or just put it in the chat right now if you want to. With that, it is currently 3 minutes to 11, and that brings our show to a close. It's been fantastic being back on air. I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Or maybe not even, because from what I understand, next week is Eurovision. So I might be busy watching Eurovision, or I might even be back here chatting with you guys and having us a wonderful time. Oh yeah, and I've had an idea for a new show. It's probably the worst idea I've ever had, but it's an idea nonetheless. Hopefully you'll be able to tune in for that. It'll be fun, I tells you. Well, for you anyway. With that, time to go. Stay tuned, and I think I've got a guest here. There's he. Oh,
Karen, I love you.
No, help me!
I'll be the toast of the town, the girl on the go, and the type of pony every pony should know. I'll be the one to watch the girl in the flow, and the type of pony every pony should know. Passion. Becoming as red fire as popular can yet be. Making my mark like stress, cutting to the side if I slip. I'm the belle of the ball, it's for the color and show. Always gotta keep in mind my pony, racing pony, every pony should know. Of the royal, you will need fair rarity. You will see I'm just as regal at the gala. You will find him, my Prince Charming, he'll guarantee will be. He will treat you like the ladies. Fashion. Pony, every pony should know. Becoming as red fire as popular can gather. Making my meat, stick moving, cutting to the side if I slip. I'm the belle of the ball, it's for the cut the show. Always gotta keep in mind my pony, racing ponies, and all the details. Every word that I speak, my approving glance is what they all see. I'm the creme de la creme, not just another Jane doll. I'm the type of pony every pony should know. Little critters hibernate under the snow and ice. And even though I love my princess, fashion's getting old. We have them gathered up their food, their homes below. And even though I love my boots, this fashion's getting old.
The royal, you will meet their rarity. You me on Justice Regal at the gala. I will find him, my Prince Charming. Your guarantee will be, he will treat me like a lady.
At home at the opera on a fancy yacht, becoming the top of all the Canterlot. I'm the creme de la creme, not just another Dame doll. Yeah, I'm the type of pony every pony should know. Fashion.